so many of you here. My name is Moira Madden, and I'm the Outreach Director at Art Center East, and I just want to welcome you to this wonderful space. Jean Williamson, who's the owner of Evermind Labels and the press room, is very kindly donating this space and the delicious coffee for this community conversation. So thank you so much for having us. And I'd like to introduce a couple people. Darcy Dolge, right here, is Art Center East's Executive Director. And I would also like to introduce George McGinnis there in the purple shirt. He is one of our extraordinary board members. So let me just quickly tell you a little bit about what ACE does in case you don't know. We are an organization, an art service organization that's been around as a nonprofit since 1977. So that is a long and storied and valuable history. So we're glad to be here and glad to continue doing work like offering classes to the community. I run a program called the Artists in Rural Schools. We send artists out into all 10 counties of Eastern Oregon and bringing the arts into to students where they are. So Randy Cohen is here, Vice President of Research for the Americans for the Arts. He'll be telling you, as you may have seen in the social media or in the newspaper, about the economic and social impact of the arts and culture here in the Tri-County area, Green, Baker, Wallowa counties. So right now, I would like to introduce Leora Sfonko, who is from the Oregon Arts Commission, which was the statewide partner who was helping all of us across Oregon put out audience surveys in, it could be museums, could be Eastern Oregon Film Festival, a gallery opening at ACE. How much do people spend when they come to an arts event? What other things in the community do they experience besides the Eastern Oregon Film Festival, for example? Leora liaised and did all of that stuff, and she's a senior program manager at the Oregon Arts Commission. So welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. And welcome, Randy. Thrilled to have you both here.
Thank you so much, Moira,
You're welcome.
Darcy, everyone, for being here and for hosting us today. I'd like to acknowledge our former commissioner, Ann Taylor. She was on the Arts Commission for 9 years, so it's so nice to see you. Yeah, the Arts Commission, and I work for the Cultural Trust too. We're the state agencies for arts and culture. A lot of folks know us for giving out grants, and we support communities in building their identities through arts and culture. And yeah, so excited to be here because we've been working with Americans for the Arts. They're the national arts advocacy organization for several years on arts and economic prosperity studies. So this is number 6. And the Arts Commission in Oregon has been involved for several rounds. They do this study about every 5 years or so. And when we first started participating in Oregon, we only had Portland participating. And then the next round we had Portland and Eugene. Like, that's not enough. And then my predecessor recruited 11 communities across the state, and Northeast did participate. And then this round, we had 19 communities across the state participate. And we were so grateful for communities who raised their hand and said, yes, we want to have local data on arts and culture. We know it's important to our communities and our schools and our artists and businesses. And thank you for having us here in this beautiful space because it's all interconnected. So we're grateful that 19 communities says, yes, we want to participate. Some of you may have helped get the surveys filled out, or you filled out the surveys, so thank you for that. We're grateful to Travel Oregon. They are a statewide sponsor and partner, and they paid for the fee for communities to participate in this study. So we're grateful for that support because tourism really understands the importance of arts and culture. People travel for events, and we have data to prove that. So we are on this whirlwind tour right now from Ontario to Hood River. Because when the data launched in October, we brought Grande to Portland, Eugene, Salem, and coastal communities. We did 10 communities in 4 days, and that was such a whirlwind trip.
Wow.
So I made it a little easier for him. We're only doing 6 communities in 4 days, but it's still a little whirlwind. We started in Ontario, and then we went to Baker. Last night we were in Joseph. We're here today. We're going to Pendleton this afternoon, and then tomorrow Hood River, which did the whole Gorge region. So having this talk to really empower local communities to understand this data, because this is local data that, as Moira said, the Tri-County participated. So Art Center East was the lead here, and then we had Josephy Center was the lead in Joseph, and Carnegie Crossroads was the lead in Baker. And they all, collected the survey, so this study is like the northeast region of those 3 counties. And then Pendleton did a separate study on their own. And it took something, so we're grateful to them. And also the Economic Development District was a partner helping recruit communities to work on this together. And we know that, it takes something for organizations to do this on top of all the work they currently do in Arts East. I just want to acknowledge you for the incredible work you're doing. And I'm excited to go check out the center afterwards, because 10 counties serving arts education and art services, these art centers are such important hubs providing education and connecting artists and supporting organizations. It's such important work, so thank you all, and thank you all for those that support. And for you all to take on this in addition to is incredible, because this data is now for everyone. It's on our website, we have a summary report and a full report, so you can use this in any advocacy work that you're doing, whether you're writing a grant, whether you're advocating to city council, a county commissioner, you're talking to a legislator. This data is helping you make the case of why arts and culture is important for your region and your organization. So we're glad to bring Randy back to talk to you all. Randy is the Vice President for Research at Americans for the Arts. He's been there since '91, and he was the architect of this study, right? So he helped develop it, they refined it over the years. So he has a true source of information and explaining this survey to you and how you can utilize this, especially through storytelling and data to help make that case. He also worked on a public opinion poll of why arts and culture is important. So that's going to be coming out in the next weeks. And you'll get how the public feel. He's like, I already saw some of the data. It's like, wow, people are saying like, oh, arts and culture is important to my life, and I'm a creator, and it's important that the government invests. So we're going to get this data as well. And this year he won an advocacy award for his work in the performing arts. He has a theater background, which you'll be able to see, and just a gem, a resource, very engaging. Last night was his 100 city speaking on AEP6.
Wow.
So we celebrated that last night over margaritas.
Here we are this
And
morning.
here we are. We're still here. We woke up early, drove at 7:30 in the morning. And so here we are, 101 just for AEP, but he's been in hundreds of cities across the country. He does talks, radio, TV. Actually, he's going to be in an OPB interview tomorrow.
Cool.
So yeah, and we've done a lot of press on this tour. So we're really grateful to be in Eastern Oregon, in Northeast, rural, understand the differences in rural, remote, and we also want to learn from you. So thank you all for all that you do, and then please help me welcome Randy Cohen. So thank you all for all that you do, and then please help me welcome Randy Cohen.
Kind introduction. Thanks. I'm really excited to be here. It's been a great trip. I always love coming out west, and it's my first time in town here, so this has been lovely. We got to walk around a bit and discover the community. First thing, and Dave kind of picked up on it, a lot of light in here, so not a super powerful throw on the PowerPoint. I'm a pretty PowerPoint minimalist, so I'll be able to talk through this even if there was no PowerPoint. We'd be able to do this fine. But the PowerPoint will be available, as is the report for the 3-county region. There'll be different materials that if they haven't been emailed to you, they will be emailed to you. So we've got a good news story to talk about today, and we're going to expand the conversation about how people think about the arts. Pretty much everybody loves the arts, right? They beautify and they create the communities we want to live in and work in, and they inspire us and they make us feel creative, and all that is true. What is also true is we're a business, we're an industry, we support jobs, we generate government revenue, we help drive tourism, And we also have to tell that story as well. So that's sort of the main entree today. We'll talk about some other ways that, a vibrant arts community is, it's really, building a healthier community as well. Arts and Economic Prosperity 6, as you heard, and you can almost maybe see here, it's a big national study. We're going to talk about the 3-county region here in terms of data. But what's important to know is that this is going to be about 2022. That's the data that we were studied for this. And 2022, right? We're just kind of coming out of the pandemic there. And normally we do this study every 5 years, but kind of had to take a Tokyo Olympics approach, right? We're like, well, we got to postpone this because we don't want to do it in the middle of the pandemic. But we did it coming shortly out of it. So, just keep that in mind. Even still, I think numbers very impressive, very powerful. But we all know also in here that the pandemic was absolutely devastating to the arts in the community, in the region, nationally. Arts organizations, first to close, they were the last to reopen. 99% of arts and culture organizations had to cancel events, suspend operations, close, some never reopened. Johns Hopkins University, I'll just give you a couple numbers, because I think it was really bad. It was. Johns Hopkins University tracks employment at all nonprofits. There's about 1.6 million nonprofit organizations in the United States, and maybe 110,000 of them are arts and culture. Arts nonprofits lost jobs at 5 times the rate of all nonprofits. And we're really kind of late coming back with the jobs. And so even after organizations reopened and we're back up and we're working in the 10 counties, still working our way back in terms of employment. The Bureau of Economic Analysis over at Department of Commerce, they did a big study like, all right, well, what was the impact of the pandemic on the nation's economy? And we heard about tourism and lodging and airlines and different industries. They called out the arts, specifically the performing arts, as among the most devastated, damaged industries. So it's been a challenging time, and we're working our way back. Interestingly, though, while all those arrows were pointing downward for the arts during the pandemic, there was one that was crazy upward, and that was personal participation and engagement in the arts. People making art or music or crafts or culinary. So that National Public Opinion Study that Leora mentioned, which is the largest of its kind ever conducted, 37% of Americans said, yeah, I tried some kind of new arts or crafts or creative pursuit during the pandemic. More than a third. And you may have recalled some articles like Amazon was writing these stories about this mysterious spike in ukulele sales. Right? Or there you go. So and like how many loaves of sourdough bread were left on our doorsteps? I ate them all. But all right. So you've tried ukulele. Anyone try something new or expand? Yeah.
Knitting. I learned to knit off YouTube.
Nice. Me too. So who else? The statistics say 1/3 of the room here, but we don't all have to come. All right, so that's fine. I bet there's a few more stories. So, and I do learn to knit during the pandemic. I'd always wanted to.
Share.
Yeah. I'm not that good. I make like the most longest scarves, But I always loved, the clickety-clack of the needles in my aunts and my grandmother knit. And boy, wherever the knitting was happening, that was the best conversation in the house as a kid. I'm sure of that. So, but when knitting, even just like trying to get those 18, stitches in a row, you can't do that and think about, the devastation of the pandemic, or is there a place for me on the other side of this, or what's this happening, to our community, the economy, and our neighbors, and people who we know who got sick. It really was a great spiritual and mental health mitigator. And in fact, American Spirits, we're part of a big international research study that looked at tens of thousands of people in the UK and in the US during the pandemic who filled out weekly online surveys about their activities and mental health and that type of thing. people who spend a half hour a day doing some kind of arts, crafts, creative, expressive pursuit, or watching the arts, better mental health, lower depression, lower anxiety, higher rates of life satisfaction. So just add that to the whole conversation about mental health that really emerged from that. So eventually, of course, though, it was time to get out of the house again, right? You know, after the pandemic, and I'm in the DC area, and so we got lots of museums. And my wife and I are like, well, where should we go? What should we do? And now that I'm a fiber artist, it's okay, you can laugh. But it turns out in DC, we've got a great textile museum. I'd never been there, you know, and 6 miles away, it's this fabulous textile museum. So we thought, well, let's do that. And so first thing we had to do, let's see if they're even open, because so many places were not open. And we went online, found their website, and here were their hours and their protocols, wear your mask, keep your distance, and read about the different exhibitions they had going. It was like perfect. Clicked the button, pulled out a credit card, you know, and so we bought our tickets online and all set to go. The next day, I was informed that we'd be dressing up for this Saturday event, so some clothing and jewelry purchases were quickly in store, so we hadn't even gotten to the event yet. There's already retail spending related to this, you know, just talking about audience spending and audience impact. But Saturday comes, and we jumped in the car, drove downtown, not too far for us, you know, again, about 6 miles, parked in a parking garage, $10, got my stuff from the guy, and on the way to the museum, though, we stopped and had lunch. Isn't that something when we have an arts experience? We make an event out of it, right? Dinner and a show, that type of thing. And there's a wonderful restaurant downtown DC. It's called Founding Farmers, and it's kind of a farm to fork place. And had a really nice lunch, not an inexpensive lunch. We spent about $70. But you know, we were out, and it was leisurely and lovely and everything. So then from there, it was about a 6-block walk to get to the museum. And we got in, and we got our program, and I got to tell you, my first sensory experience being in that museum, it actually wasn't a 1,000-year-old tapestry. I mean, that's pretty cool, and they had that. And it wasn't like this amazing quilt exhibit. It was the air conditioning, because this was August in Washington, D.C. There was like a blast furnace outside, and I was like, oh my God, this place feels so good. I haven't even seen anything yet. I already love it. And then, you know, we spent the afternoon, we saw the exhibitions, heard a talk by a curator, and, you know, and hit the gift shop on the way out. And so it was fabulous. Think about all the industries that were touched related to this one experience of just going to a museum. Well, it started the week before when we went online and we found the museum's website. Now, we take all this for granted, right? But the fact is, arts and culture organizations have web sites, which means they've got web designers and computer programmers, and they pay for connectivity and photography and writing, right? So you've got people who populate with professional content, that website. We bought our tickets online. Now you got the finance and the e-commerce people. They're seeing a little bit of that action, right? And then we drove downtown and we parked in the parking garage. And I can tell you, that part of downtown during the week, you can't get a spot. It's just jammed. You gotta get to like 5:30 in the morning if you want a parking spot. On the weekend, crickets. If it wasn't for the arts organizations down there, those parking garages would be closed. That guy that gave me my stub, that's a job. There's a company that owns and manages those parking garages. So that's happening. We got to the restaurant, all the food there, everything's grown and sourced within 50 miles, and so some of the $70 is going to the local growers and producers of the food. The waiters bring home some personal income, and the owner of the restaurant, entrepreneurial income. So you got all of that, and then we get to the museum. You ever notice whenever you go to an arts event, you're always getting paper? There's a program or a flyer or a postcard or something. There's a graphic artist that did all the design and layout work for that. Printers make bank off the arts because we're always using like glossy, thick coated paper and full color and thousands of units. Sometimes if you're talking to your Rotary Club or your business community, just like, who are the printers, and just remind them. And then, how about the utility bill? Our culture centers, keeping those places air conditioned, these theaters in the summer, heated, in the winter. So arts organizations pay all these expenses just like any other business. Most people, though, don't think about arts as a job or an industry until they see the curator giving a lecture, they see the performers on the stage. But the fact is, arts organizations, we've got accountants and auditors, and we got legal services. If you have a facility, you got a plumber, an electrician, security staff in a lot of organizations. You got marketing and box office people. So we employ a range of industries across the community. And when we talk about it, or if you lead an arts organization, it's like, yeah, that's a no-brainer. But you know what? Most people don't think about the arts this way. It's not an intuitive way to think about the arts until we tell that story. So all of that is what we're doing with this Arts and Economic Prosperity Study. We're looking at the spending by organizations and the event-related spending by arts audiences. Make sense? Good. All right, so we'll get to the ghost presentation here, but again, so Arts and Economic Prosperity, we published it last October. It's a national study, 373 study regions across all 50 states, from Puerto Rico, 19, as you heard, right here in Oregon. And, there we are. Hopefully you can at least see that technical effect. That was all good. A couple things about the study. We focus on nonprofit arts and culture organizations. And he's like, oh, he's doing that DC thing with his fingers, right? What's he hiding? Nothing. So yes, of course, our nonprofit organizations, but also might include an arts program in a library or a social service organization, or sometimes a faith organizations, have art exhibits or music series. Now, we don't take the whole library budget, just the arts program, but it's all the ways that organizations are connecting arts and culture to the community. What's not included is Hollywood motion pictures, the commercial art galleries, architects or publishers, all a hugely important part of our cultural ecology, but just not part of this study. And why do we focus on the nonprofit sector? Because typically when the state or our city, county governments or businesses are investing in the arts, those dollars are going to those nonprofit organizations. And it's an appropriate question to ask, right? What's the ROI to the public on that? Cultural benefits? Absolutely, we all get that. What else you got? Our legislators, our philanthropists and foundations. I mean, there's a lot of demand, in shrinking resources, these days. And so, what are all the different ways, that we're adding value to the community? So that's the nonprofit. We take a very reliable approach to economic impact. I got a team of economists. We use what's called an IMPLAN platform. It's an online economic platform. Just know this, it's the same system that over 1,000 city governments and state governments subscribe to, so it's good enough for them. And it allows us to customize an economic model for right here in the community, right here in the Grande. Well, the 3-county region, it's very localized. Lastly, we take a very conservative approach to economic impact. Surveyed 55 organizations in the region, 27 responded. That's what we use. We don't make estimates for non-respondents. So every dollar I talk about, we're going to be able to put our hands on. So, and know, yeah, it's an industry and there's even more out there. All right, so what do we find out? Total economic activity, and this is again in 2022, $6 million of economic activity. And there's two numbers up here. On the left, you've got spending by those 27 responding organizations, $4.1 million. And that right there is a myth buster for people. Again, we all appreciate the arts, but this reminds us that arts organizations are businesses. They employ people locally, they purchase goods and services from other businesses, they're members of the Chamber of Commerce, and tourism drivers. Arts are good business citizens. Now, no surprise, arts organizations have an economic impact. I can give you $5 bill and my economist will chase you around and see what you do with it and look at the impact of that. But few industries generate the kind of event-related spending that the arts do, right? And that's, you know, a meal, that may be parking, that may be lodging perhaps, or, you know, the real racket in this, babysitting, you know, so we can corner that market. That is something we also captured, so that's $1.9 million. That's gonna be your number on the right, total audience spending. So $6 million of economic activity related to those 27 responding organizations. So what's the economic impact of that? Well, the first thing we look at is jobs. 144 jobs supported as a result of that $6 million in spending. A couple things about these jobs. One, these aren't just artists at arts organizations, because remember, arts organizations employ a whole range of people and purchase goods and services across the community. And there's also some hospitality, you know, people in there. So there might be our barista and our, you know, a waiter, or, you know, some lodging. Another thing, these jobs, though, are necessarily local jobs. This is not an industry that's going to be offshore. We need the performers in the theater. We need the curators, you know, hanging the art. We need the arts educators in the schools. We need the arts therapists in the hospitals. These are local jobs. Bottom line, arts, not just food for the soul, putting food on the table for 144 households. We also look at government revenue. And it's $1.5 million in local, state, and federal government revenue. And, you know, again, kind of a myth buster. Even people who like support the arts and love the arts, they kind of see those dollars, though, as like one-way ticket out of the treasury. But in fact, those dollars aren't disappearing down some black hole of goodness. You know, they're giving back to the community in the form of government revenue that it needs to pay for other services. So it's an investment. Small investment, big returns. That's the arts. So those are two of the big economic impact figures. That makes sense? Everyone with me so far? Good. All right. Let's start to drill down a little bit to the kind of the real value-added aspect of this, and that's the audience spending part. So we did, to come up for this part of the data, over 550 audience surveys across the region, where we, at a whole range of events, where we asked people, how much did you spend, you know, on, you know, so this will be hard to, actually, really hard to see if I'm standing in front of it, but, you know, food and drink, and again, all of this is in the report. It's a 58-page report. We'll just make sure you know how to download that. But, you know, food is about a third of it. Oh, well, so the typical attendee spends $29.77 per person, per event, not including the cost of admission. $29.77, and that's an average. You know, that might be at a performance, might be at a free open-air festival, you know, taking the kids to a children's theater, a museum, exhibition. That's an average. And there were 65,000 attendees just at those 27 organizations in 2022. So you're talking about a lot of foot traffic across the region, and each of those people spending just under $30 per person. So there's, you know, food and drink and transportation, and you know, we got supplies and shopping and clothing, right? So that was us. You know, we were dressing up for the museum. You know, lodging. This is that's always one that gets people's attention. So I'll explain it now. $2.25. Where can you get that room? You know, actually, would you want that room? So that's an average. Other is always fascinating. And one of my favorite other stories, nationally we did 224,000 audience surveys as part of this. Massive data set, literally a room full of data, paper. But there was a farmer in Wisconsin who paid somebody $60 to milk his cows so he could go to the theater that night. Isn't that great? People are doing what it takes to get to the arts. So I don't know, I love that story. So in addition to how much did you spend related to this arts event, we also asked folks for their zip code. Because we want to find out, do you live in the three-county region or are you from outside the region? 15% came from outside the region. And having spent a couple days in this region, man, you really got to drive to get here. So, I mean, that's kind of an impressive number to me. You know, you're really pulling folks from afar. And do they spend differently? Yeah, you bet they do. $52.33 per person per event, not including the cost of admission. Now, a little something about the admission. We actually ask about admission, but those admission dollars are going to the organizations. The organizations are spending those dollars, so we count it there. If we put it in that pie chart, we'd be counting it twice, right? So admission matters. It's just that's how we count it. We did ask those non-local attendees one more question, which was, why are you here? We're glad you're here. Thanks for coming. Are you here on business? You're here visiting friends and family? Two very common reasons people travel, right? 75%, exactly, it's not a rounding. I wish it was 76%. As a researcher, I hate those even numbers. But 75% exactly said, we came specifically for this arts event. So you could see the pulling power that the arts have, right? It's bringing people to the community. A little more about that. So 15% from outside the region, 10% of that group had a lodging cost. They spend $142 per person. You know, so that's when you get that head in the bed. You know, that's when the registers really start ringing. So that is what the arts are doing. This is a great tourism and economic development story. We're putting heads in beds and cheeks in seats and derrieres and cafe chairs, right? Here we are. So we are good for local businesses. All right, everyone good so far? We asked another one. This will be a little hard to see. This is one of the slides with a lot of data on it. But about volunteerism. And you know what? The volunteer army is just what keeps our organizations going and so vital. And just the 27 responding organizations, 1,154 volunteers that contributed over 91,000 hours in volunteer time. I mean, that's amazing to me, right? This is what helps keep our arts and culture serving the community and a vital contributor to the economy. Now, because we're commodifying everything today, right, you can actually put a dollar value on volunteerism. This is tucked right down here. The independent sector every year publishes the value of the average volunteer hour by state. And in Oregon, $32.37 per hour, and that's just all nonprofits. That's an average board member, ticket taker, you know, whatever. But so you do the math on that, and it's $3 million of volunteer value. Now, that's not part of the $6 million, right? So don't conflate that, because there's really no dollars changing hands here. But that's just a lot of the value. I think that's really worth appreciating. And now that you got that 32-37 figure, we can all figure out, well, in my organization, you know, I've got this many volunteers, that many hours. Here's our volunteer impact. One of the things we did, because you know we took a little extra time between studies, is we added some social impact questions, and Maura mentioned those. And again, this is going to be hard to see, but it's in the report. 85% of the attendees at arts events said, you know, this arts and culture event, this is a pillar of our community, you know, in my opinion. 89% said this arts event or this venue is a source of pride and community identity. And a similar percentage said, I'd feel a sense of loss if this were no longer available. And what to me actually turned out to be one of the most interesting questions, and I was really surprised later, is the last one there. 86% of attendees said, it's important to me that this venue, this arts and culture experience, be available for future generations. And that says to me that arts are more than just like a one-time transactional experience or moment, right? But it's our story. You know, it's where our community has been, it's where we are, it's where we're going. And so there's a really soulful appreciation for the arts. And I love that, and those numbers are pretty high comparatively. So there's a lot of deep appreciation for that. Here's another one I struggle to see. I guess maybe we did need a brighter term. They had a very good idea of moving it to the corner, but no, we thought about that too late. So anyway, that would have been easier. But again, you'll have all of this. when you download the report and turn the last page on the back cover, you're going to find a number of national partners on your economic impact study. So like I said, I'm in DC, which is the land of national organizations. There's so many national organizations in Washington, DC. There's actually a national organization for the national organizations, But you can make this work for you because our mayors all belong to the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and they hang out with the other mayors, and the National League of Cities with mayors and city council people. Our county managers and commissioners, they belong to the National Association of Counties, and Destinations International is where other tourism people go. Maybe, you're in the business community. You pay attention to the Conference Board, National Organization for Big Business. On down the line, your city manager. They are partners on this because, one, they too believe arts and culture is a fundamental component of a healthy community, and two, they buy into the methodology, they buy into the results. So when you go and you advocate for the arts, give them the numbers, but flip that over and say, listen, we're not just making this up. Your national association is on board with this. We present at their conferences. We publish in their publications. So it's really upping the credibility of the study for you, the advocate, the user, right? So that is arts in economic prosperity. I want to start to expand the conversation a little bit, though. So not only do those national associations understand the value of arts and culture in the community, but the community, turns out, appreciates this as well. So again, the National Public Opinion Study that we published some results with the study, we're doing more next month. No surprise, really, 86% of the American public says, yeah, the arts create more livable communities. It does kind of get my attention that 79% of the public says arts are good for local economy, good for local businesses and jobs. So when we get out there, and again, we just sort of tell that story a little bit, people are like, oh yeah, I did $29.77. I definitely spent more than that last time I went to an arts event. But it's not an intuitive way to think about our work. And so, we got to remind folks. And once we do, it really registers. So that's I think a really valuable take. So arts, and a lot of times I already saw some people wondering when I was talking about the AEP6 study. We focus on nonprofits, and the question now usually is well, that's great, but what about all that other stuff? What about, design and publishing and artists and gig workers and the university drama department and the commercial galleries? So the good news is the feds are on it. So the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, top economics shop on the planet over at Department of Commerce, they publish a study every year now called the Arts and Cultural Production Satellite Account. And so they start, they're yeah, nonprofit, that's great, super, but they totally widen the lens to include all the arts and culture all across the economy. Not the audience piece, but just the spending and the commerce that goes with the businesses and the artists. And nationally, against the artists, nationally, $1.1 trillion industry in 2022. That is 4.3% of the nation's economy. Huge. Now what's great is they also do a state version of this for all the states. So right here in Oregon in 2022, all arts and culture in this state, so nonprofit, commercial, all of it, right? A $9.5 billion with a B dollar industry, supports over 61,000 jobs and represents 3.2% of the state's economy. Now is that a lot or a little? Well, I'll tell you, it's bigger than agriculture, it's bigger than utilities, it's bigger than education. So it's significant. And next time you talk to a state legislator and they're well, I love the arts, but we got to focus on business and jobs. Arts are business, arts are jobs. And not only that, the research by the economists, because they've been doing this for a little over a decade now, shows that there is a causal relationship between a growth in arts jobs and all employment in a state. ask any legislator, local, state, federal, their 3 priorities are, they'll tell you, jobs, jobs, and jobs, right? I mean, everybody is paying attention to jobs. So we're connecting all this work to jobs. This is showing that you grow arts jobs, you grow all jobs. And it gets back to all the industries we support and how the arts diversify the economy, and sort of some good reasons behind that. And I think we'll email around, because I don't think we did yet, the 10 reasons to support the arts, but we'll make that available, because I don't know if you got that yet, right? Well, it's a one-pager. Yeah, okay, so, so make sure you sign up or exchange a business card. It's a one-pager, and that'll highlight these economic data as well as some other impactful findings. The fact that they do this research study is important as the data itself. Because BEA, they study hundreds of industries. They only do a couple dozen of these satellite accounts. There has to be a good strategic, competitiveness reason to do them. And we live in a global innovation economy. That's the world's economy, right? And this is an appreciation that, creativity drives innovation, arts and culture drives creativity. You want to lift up innovation, push down on the arts. So another very powerful study that gets beyond to a state level as well. The business community also gets this. There's a study, it's called Ready to Innovate, and it's by the Conference Board. I mentioned them earlier. The Conference Board, that's the National Organization for Big Business. They give you the leading index of economic indicators, Consumer Confidence Index. If you're a Fortune 1000 CEO, you want to know what the business scholars at the Conference Board are learning about business. Their research shows that creativity is now among the top 5 applied skills that business leaders are looking for. In fact, it's leapfrog the 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic. But of course, we talked to as researchers, of course you have to be able to read, write, and do math. But if you can take some creativity and apply that to your scientific, your engineering, your coding, your agriculture knowledge, those are the high-paying, innovative jobs and businesses, and people we're all trying to, attract to our communities. Interestingly, in the public opinion study, one of the top reasons people say the benefits they get from participating in the arts is, it makes me feel creative. And more than half the population, 60% of the employed workforce says, the more creative I am in the workplace, the more successful I am in the workplace. So, this is all part of the changing innovation economy and the role of arts in that. In this study, 72% of business leaders say creativity is of high importance in hiring. 85% of those folks say struggling to find the people we're looking for. So the business researchers were like, okay, I get it, there's no typing test for creativity. How do you know if you got a creative person sitting across from you? And there were 2 indicators way at the top. Starting your entrepreneurial activity, right? Starting your own company, and study of the arts. Way above everything. And they write in the conclusion of this report, business scholars write for business leaders, it is clear that the arts, music, drawing, living, drama, dance, literature, media, provide skills sought by employers of the 3rd millennium. And this is kind of what this looks like. So we used to have a board member who was chair of our board chair was a banker, big-time banker, because at the same time he was our board chair, he was also board chair of the American Banking Association. And he would always, didn't matter what group he was talking to, say, when I'm hiring somebody, I always ask them about their personal involvement in the arts. Because for him, it was a proxy for creativity. Although, he would say, except for my bank tellers. I don't want creative bank tellers. Everybody does. So, the importance of creativity. And this, of course, gets to the importance of arts education. And I think this is one of the most important things we can be focusing on now. The research is so clear that, and I love all the great arts education you all, do, and I know there's like nothing but more need and demand, but it's so impactful on education. Young people with an education rich in the arts are performing better academically. They've got better grades, better standardized test scores, lower dropout rates, better attitudes about community engagement, community service, and those are findings that cut across all socioeconomic strata. So every child stands to benefit from an education rich in the arts. Back to the public opinion study, 92% of the American public says arts are important for an important part of education for students pre-K through 12. And 70% of the population says it's improving academic performance. So you've got an issue here that people agree on. 9 out of 10, Republicans, 9 out of 10 Democrats, 9 out of 10 independents. People can really get behind arts education. And again, I just think it's one of the most important things we could be doing. There is, however, other research now that shows students of color, students who live in low-income communities or attend Title I schools have been losing their arts education at a very measurable rate. And that's a big enough challenge that a couple secretaries of education ago called this a civil rights issue, because the research is so powerful that the arts are helping keep kids in school. I gotta tell you, I was not a good student. Whatever was going on outside the window for me was the most interesting thing that day. But it was the arts, it was theater that kept me coming, it kept me excited about school. And eventually the brain kicked in. Waiting for the lobes to connect, I'm sure is what my mother would have penned my biography as. But these are just some of the benefits, and they extend even into adulthood. There's been trend data. Those arts education students who are actively involved in arts education, even as young adults in their 20s, more likely to have some college going, more likely to be in career-oriented jobs. So, powerful. What does this look like in action? It's too bad you can't see this one, but this happy-looking guy right here, Thomas Sudoff, is a Stanford researcher. A few years back, he got the Nobel Prize for Medicine. And, big smile on his face right there. You can't see it too well. But the reporters called him, Professor, congratulations. And one of them asked, who was your most influential teacher? And I'm sure they all thought he'd say, I'll never forget high school biology. Without missing a beat, he said, I owe it all to my bassoon teacher. And he went on to explain how it was his arts education that gave him the habits of mind that made him a great scientist. Problem identification, problem solving, pattern recognition, stick-to-itiveness, ability to work, as part of a team and collaboratively. So that got everybody by surprise. But the research actually shows that may not be some far-fetched kind of idea. There's a Michigan State University researcher named Robert Root Bernstein, who studied creativity his whole career. He's a MacArthur Genius Award winner and everything. And one of the things he and his team did is they looked at the Nobel laureates in the sciences going all the way back to the beginning and their level of arts involvement and compared them to scientists at two scientific societies, one in the US, one in the UK. Nobel laureates 17 times more likely to be actively involved as artists, as musician, as sculptor, as painter. So something's going on there, that's noteworthy. And also a pretty fun story. Everyone doing okay so far?
Yes.
Can I maybe just do a couple little other ways that arts are improving our communities? Good. So one of the ways, the issues I really matter and have personal impact for me is healthcare. And of course, this is one of the biggest issues, in the country, right? Even economically, healthcare is on its way to being 20% of the nation's economy. I've got an arts background in the theater, right? No surprise. But I also have a medical research background. I work for Stanford University. I work for Scripps Clinic and Research Foundation down in La Jolla, California. When I worked at Scripps, every Tuesday at 3 o'clock, we used to have live chamber music in the lobby. And it was already a beautiful lobby. I got to tell you, 4 musicians it was completely transformed the space. And patients could walk in, they could be wheeled in, they could bring family. Medical staff was allowed to listen and participate. And we would notice that patients that we'd see clinically, in their rooms, lethargic, depressed, even if you have a view of the ocean, which everyone there did, nobody wants to be in the hospital, right? But in the presence of the music, you could see physical transformation. The eyes got less cloudy, people's posture got better, and you just sense like a greater awareness of the environment around them, and we can all see this. And it's like something's happening here, like they're getting an IV drip of the arts, you know, or something. And well, there's this growing body of research now that shows the arts are part of our healing. We have shorter hospital stays, fewer doctor visits, less medication, less depression, evidence that it saves money. And this isn't even new necessarily. You know, the god Apollo was the god of both music and healing. You know, talk about a big portfolio, that guy had it. But it all went together, it turns out, right? So in some ways, we're just rediscovering, you know, some of what we've already always known. Now about half the nation's hospitals have some kind of arts programs, and it might be rotating art exhibits, bedside carts, music, hospital orchestras. And there's even research that shows in hospitals with arts programs, lower rates of nursing turnover. This was in the Journal of Nursing a bunch of years back. And they quantified it, because we're quantifying everything today. It costs, and this was, you know, 10 years ago or something, it costs a hospital $65,000 to replace an RN and $95,000 to replace a critical care nurse. So, you know, when we try to get our hospital CEOs, you know, advocate for the arts, I mean, there's some great data that why they should be interested too. So I think this is really powerful also. Arts builds empathy, right, and connectedness in the community. 72% of the nation's American adults say arts create opportunity for shared experiences with people of different race, ethnicity, age, or faith. 63%, you know, 2/3, the arts help me understand other cultures in my community. You know, and that's something we're all trying to do, right? How do we better connect our communities? And that's something, you know, again, with the arts. So let me start to wrap up here, and this one is a picture, black and white picture, from the Louvre in 1913, bad news in Paris. The Mona Lisa was stolen in 1913. It took them 2 years to get it back, and this is where it had been hanging. In the 2 years the Mona Lisa was missing, more people went to see where it had been hanging, you know where this is going, than saw the painting itself in the previous 14 years. It's so easy to take arts and culture for granted, to assume our artists and our arts organizations are always going to be part of and serving and advancing our communities. You know, we've got a job to do. You know, we've got to be relentless messengers and advocates about the power of the arts. So let me just give you a couple of tools real quick. When you download the report, the 58-page report for the 3-county region, turn to page 28, and you're going to find the Arts and Economic Prosperity Calculator. And all you need are 2 numbers, and you can calculate your organization or a group of organizations' economic impact. Total expenditures, total attendance. Actually, if you have attendance, if you just have expenditures, you can do that too. And literally, you can just do it on the back of a napkin and say, this is now my organization's economic impact. And you can do this next year and the year after, because, you know, we'll do this study again in a couple of years. Apologies in advance. But this is a tool. And next time you're writing your grants and talking about how we're transforming the community, here's our paragraph on our economic impact. So use that, page 28 of your report. And then advocacy. We've got to be messengers and advocates for the arts. And you know, there's whole libraries on how to lobby and advocate, but I break it down to 3 questions. What's the message? Who gets the message? And who delivers the message? So, first question, what's the message? Well, as advocates, we need a quiver full of case-making arrows. You know, we got to be able to talk about jobs and the economy and healthcare and education. So we talked about a whole bunch of messages today, right? And then when you get access, soon when you see the 10 reasons to support the arts, all on one page, just put that in your pocket and never take it out. You know, there's your localized messaging song sheet. So what's the message? Second question, who gets the message? And that's where we do a little bit of our research, right? Who are those decision makers in our environment? It might be a legislative committee. It might be, you know, a CEO or a board of trustees. Who's making the decisions about funding, and what do they care about? And, you know, if you can find that out in advance, so then you can go in and you can say, like, you know, Congressman Pingree across the state is like one of the great national arts education champions. But other people are like, yeah, I'm about mental health, or I'm about education. Lead with that, but be ready to talk about all of it, right? And the third question, and sometimes I just think this is the most important one, who delivers the message? So they run me up to Capitol Hill a lot, you know, and, do member briefings or staff briefings. But they see me coming a mile away by now, right? Guys cover up their wallets and, ladies hide their purse in a drawer. But if I can bring with me a business leader, an artist, or a school superintendent, or, a military officer, and they can tell their story about what the arts mean to them and their community or their work, totally changes the conversation. We had a panel a few years back where we had the mayor of Mesa, Arizona, and he was telling a story of, it was budget hearing with the city council for the arts that night. So it was the mayor, he said, and I had the city council on both sides, and 60 people lined up in front of me to do their 3 minutes about arts funding. He said, what I noticed that night, though, is that the chief of police was there, which in itself wasn't that unusual. It's a city council meeting. He said, but he was in full chief of police regalia. Hat, tie, medals. He said, that was different. And after everybody else had done their 3 minutes, he asked for 3 minutes and got up and said, if you got to take a cut out of the arts budget, I'd rather you just took it out of my public safety budget. Because when they do their job well, it makes my job easier. You can imagine if we had 1,000 police chiefs on that message, right? So who delivers the message? We've got those people on our boards of directors, there are neighbors, there are business people. Just think very creatively. And lastly, my golden rule for advocacy, no numbers without a story, no stories without a number. We're the arts, right? We're all about stories. How maybe a child was, life was sort of transformed in one of our programs. Or just how I was attending an arts event and I spent $29.77. Or my organization, you want to know what our utility bill is and how much we spend on technology. Tell that story and then you can follow it up with the numbers. So, everything you do to advance the arts and arts education, the community is important. You're important for doing it. And thanks very much.